Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of HSP TV. I am your host, Barbara, and today I have a very special guest, William Allen, with me, and we are going to be talking about highly sensitive men. And for those of you who have been following me, you are bound to notice that most of my guests are female, although I have a male here and there, for which I'm very grateful. And I met William through the HP Summit, and we thought it would be a really good idea to talk about highly sensitive men because it's already not easy being sensitive as a woman, but in general, it's more accepted than being a sensitive man. So I've been looking forward to our talk today, William, and I feel very grateful that you're here.
Thanks, Barbara. I'm glad to be here.
So I am assuming you are a highly sensitive man yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was some of the inputs, my experience as a highly sensitive man growing up. Of course, I've always been a highly sensitive man, but I didn't find out about it till, gosh, I was in my 50s before I realized it was a thing.
Mm,
I kind of knew that I had uh, sensitive characteristics because people would tell me,
yeah,
you're too sensitive, right?
yeah. Grow
So,
with thicker skin.
but I never did put the things together because actually, Elaine Aaron had not written her book until mid to late 90s, I believe.
Yeah,
And I didn't even pick up a copy of it till sometime in the 2005 range. And it was an eye opener for me. It opened my eyes about my behaviors and the way I was, and it kind of made all the sense in the world. But as you were saying in the introduction, it took me a while to get to the point where I could accept the idea that sensitive man or sensitive and me were kind of things that I wanted to embrace. But I did eventually, and I'm glad I did. And it led me to blogs and two books that I've written about it. So it's been a great experience, just being more authentic and being truthful to my
yeah.
own personality type.
hmm I love that. And you're doing such amazing work. But I also know that in the beginning, before you found out, there probably have been struggles. Could you share a little bit more about that?
Well, I can remember as a kid, I grew up in the US, and a particular part of the US that was very traditional, Southern United States. The culture there is very traditional. Men do this thing, traditional women do this thing. And if you kind of drift between what culturally is expected, like I did, and I'm sure a lot of other highly sensitive boys and men have done over the years, you get feedback right away. So you find out, oh gosh, there must be something wrong with me because, you know, maybe I cried at a movie or was moved to tears by a book or a sunset or whatever it is, outward indications of my sensitivity. And so you struggle with that, and you're constantly in this battle about trying to figure out, gosh, if I'm sensitive, does that make me less of a man? Does it make me less masculine? And this is a question I hear all the time from highly sensitive men. And it's a tough one too,
hmm
because it's hard to admit, for men to admit that they're sensitive until they understand the trait. They understand the good things about the trait, and truthfully understand some of the challenges that go with the trait and learn how to manage those. And once those things start falling in line, it's a little bit easier. But I know growing up as a kid, Barbara, I had a rough time.
hmm
Uh, I didn't, I don't recall ever being bullied. I was a big kid, a tall kid, but always felt kind of out of place sometimes. I wasn't quite like all the other boys. I was a little bit different. And as I progressed into adolescence and then on into young adulthood, and throughout my corporate career, it was always a challenge trying to be who I was as a sensitive man and still put on that corporate face
hmm
of being kind of a, you know, unemotional, analytical, because I did work in information technology.
Yeah,
And, having emotion doesn't always go with that field because it's really kind of a nuts and bolts, tell me the facts and all that kind of stuff field, as I
yeah,
know because you were in it as well.
yes.
Um, but that was a challenge too. And I was a corporate manager, so it was a little push-pull here because I wanted to do what I needed to do as a corporate manager, but also I was very empathetic to my staff. Sometimes it was tough doing things like giving them
Firing
tough
someone.
reviews and,
Yeah.
you know, performance reviews and things like that, or layoffs always really bothered me. And certainly having to fire people if that was necessary. So you go through those kind of things, and when you don't know and you don't have a good foundation about what the trait is, you're almost kind of flying blind, and you find that you're kind of going back and forth between who you think you should be and who you really are.
Exactly, because there's this stereotype view of a man. And usually that is the strong man, the silent man, the man that doesn't show any emotion, the man that
Right.
always has all the answers, the one that likes the cars and the beer and the football and the boobs, and that measures their dick size with other men.
Yeah.
I know I'm generalizing, but a lot of these stereotypical things are what people have been taught or believe about what is a man. And sensitive has always been a dirty word. It's like,
Yes.
ooh. So, as a man being associated with the word sensitive, for a lot of men, that doesn't fit in with the stereotypical image of a real man or the alpha man or the
Right.
strong man. And that's why I wrote an article, Sensitive and Strong, Can We Really Be Both? Because, yes, the highly sensitive man can be sensitive and strong, and their sensitivity is actually a really big strength.
Yes.
But in general, society doesn't see it that way. And when you've taught or you've learned, you have been taught I call them the rules, the bullshit rules about how things are supposed to be, which includes what sensitive is and what strong is, then I can imagine that you feel out of place because you do not fit the stereotypical image of a man, how it's in general portrayed. Admitting that you're sensitive is generally also not the best of ideas because it's been seen as a weakness or even frowned upon. So I can imagine that you're then well, stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? Where on the one hand, you want to be yourself, on the other hand, you get judged for being who you are. And I can imagine that leaves you not knowing how to act, how to be, or where you stand.
Absolutely. And I think prior to having a better education, if you will, about the trait, that's exactly what I was saying. You're navigating without a map. Um, you're going against the traditional masculine traits, as you put it. You got to be stoic. You got to be invulnerable. You can't ask for help ever. You have to know everything, and you have to constantly be unemotional and logical and strong. The definition of strong very often is more about posturing yourself in a world against other men. And so for sensitive men, it's really difficult to manage that. But you're absolutely right about the term sensitive. It has gotten such a bad rap. And there are so many people out there who've talked about, well, we need to change the name. We need to change it to something else. It needs to
Mhm.
be something better, more descriptive. And although I understand the logic behind that, and I do identify with it in some ways, the fact is that the term has been out there for over 30 years.
Yes.
It's embedded in the research. It's not going to get changed. It's not going away. So what I like to say to people is this: this is our word. We need to own this word. We need to define what this word means, and we need to let the world know what that definition is. And sometimes, especially when you're working with guys who, might be career-wise be in sort of scientific or nuts and bolts kind of crafts, things like engineering and computer science or whatever, um, they like to have things explained to them in kind of that nuts and bolts way. So what I try to do with that is say this: if you're trying to take a measurement of something, right, which is a kind of a scientific thing, you want the most accurate and precise measuring device you can have. In other words, you want a sensitive measuring device to the thing that you're measuring. And that sensitivity is what that device carries into the field with you and is able to measure that whatever it is you're measuring at a precise level. You want it as accurate as possible so you get the best instrument for that. Now, in some cases, those instruments are finicky. They don't work when it's 30 below zero, or they don't work when it's extremely hot.
Yeah.
But in the range, that sweet spot range in which they're at best, they do, and they get the most precise information you'll get. Now, that's why when I present to men very often, I don't focus on the emotionality because immediately they turn off. They go, well, I don't want anything to do with that because you're too emotional, too whatever.
Mhm.
But if you can present that sort of metaphor and then present, like we use the does model that Elaine developed, depth of processing, overstimulation, emotional reactivity, and sensitivity to subtleties in the environment, then you can dive into that. And then
Yes.
it begins to come together as a picture. Well, we get overstimulated because we get so much data input going into
Exactly.
us. We have a capacity for deep processing. That means we have to deep dive with the stuff that we got. We react emotionally to things because we have a very high degree of empathy and we have a high degree of interaction with the environment around us that affects us emotionally. So when you put all that together for them, and suddenly sensitivity doesn't sound so bad, but you're right, there is this really big stigma that we have when it comes to sensitive, and that's part of the battle, and it's part of our job, I think, especially as sensitive thought leaders, to help people be able to embrace the trait. And again, I always say 3 E's: educate yourself about the trait. There's lots of stuff out there now, a lot more than there was 30 years ago,
For
lots of
sure.
books, research, webinars, coaches, you name it, they're all out there now. No excuse for not educating yourself. And then the second thing is, once you've educated yourself, embrace the trait. Wrap your arms around it. That's you. That's who you are. And there are lots of people in the world that are like you. And then finally, when you're comfortable with it, go out, and I call evangelizing, but it's really going out and teaching other people about what the trait is.
Mhm.
And that, like I said, we need to own that term. We need to own sensitive, and men need to own that. And sensitive men are starting to step up a little bit more now, and I like to see that and like to encourage it too.
Yes, me too. I have lots of men that come to me for help, and I always feel very fortunate. I think it comes because I worked in IT for 18 years, and I am more the tomboy than the girly girl.
Right.
But I also hear lots of sensitive men saying, "Oh, but I can communicate a lot better with women than I can with other
That's
men."
true.
It's I had a friend and I always called him a man that's very in touch with his feminine side. He
Right.
was one that if I had my hair cut, he would say, "Oh, you got your hair cut." While my own boyfriend didn't even see it, or sometimes my mother wouldn't even see it.
Uh,
So he has attention for detail. That's one of the things that characterizes a sensitive man. But what I always find fascinating is that it hasn't always been frowned upon. In the older days, and also in the animal kingdom, the sensitive ones are the ones that have the highest position. If you look at tribes, it's always the shaman or the medicine man and
exactly.
the wise man, the sage. Those are the sensitive beings. And in the animal kingdom, you see it very clearly. They are the ones that are on the lookout, that
Yes.
have the responsibility of keeping the rest of the group or the pack safe. So they were revered and they were sort of almost put on a pedestal, and it was a desirable trait. So somewhere between there and here, things went the opposite way.
Yeah, exactly. And I like the way you frame that. It's beautifully done, by the way. That really leads us in a lot of ways to this idea that the trait is an evolutionary quality. Lane Aaron writes about this a lot. And you're right, it's in the animal kingdom. There's at least 100 species of animals that have this particular trait as well as part of their population. It's important. The observational skills that highly sensitive people bring to bear, whether they're male or female, doesn't matter. All of us have that ability. is very important, especially if you think about it from a survivability standpoint, as Elaine has pointed out. Knowing where the good water is, as opposed to where the bad water is, knowing where it's safe to be and where it's not safe. Where's a good place to set up camp? Where's a good place to hide? Where do we need to go from here, and that kind of thing. And those people, because as you said, they tend to be gifted that way, they become more prized, right? You don't want, in a tribe of 100 people, you don't want 100 people that have that trait. Actually, science says that it works better if a small slice of the population has that trait as opposed to the entire population. So we're a small group of the human population, but this trait has made us what I call sensory aware. And that means, and my definition of what that means is that not only are we aware of what's going outside of us, the environment, we're very keen on that. As your friend was able to notice, there's something different about you. I see that, I notice that, and I can, he can remark about it. So having that ability to see what's going out there. But here's the other part of this that I think is very, and what makes us very valuable, is not only can we know what's going on in the environment, but we also understand the impact that we have in the environment. So we know what our footprint is in the environment. So if we're hurting someone's feelings, something we do is causing a problem, we're very aware of those kind of things. So it goes two ways.
Yes.
How we affect the environment and how the environment affects us. And having that observational ability, as they say in the DOES models, that sensing the subtle, people are missing that stuff, right?
Yes.
Because their sensory wiring is different than ours. And we're looking for those subtle, small details. Again, going back to those days when it was evolutionarily necessary for us to do that.
Yes, exactly. And because it has a lot of really beautiful qualities, but I think it has to do with the natural sort of ebb and flow of societies, right? Because in the hippie time, when everything was love and peace and everybody loved everybody, you being a sensitive man would have been not a problem. You would have fit right in and fit in with the philosophy and the time spirit at that time. And then our society moved to the logic, the brain, and the science era. And there was no room for sensitive in a logic dictated society, because you cannot measure intuition with science methods. And you know things. How do you know things? You have no idea. Oh, no, 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 no. We don't believe that. You need to have proof of what you're saying, because otherwise I won't believe you. And so we became so rational that there was no room anymore for sensitive and intuition and all the other things that are so wonderful about the trade. And I'm very happy to see that we're moving back to a society where there's room again for people like us.
Well, I honestly think that, I'm what they call the baby boomer generation, the ones that were born after World War II and so forth, that went through that hippie time frame. Although I was a little young for some of that stuff, but and there's a term for that, by the way, that was very popular back then. It's called SNAG, sensitive new age guy. That's what they called guys that were like you were describing there, sensitive new age guys. But nevertheless, I'm glad to see that the younger generations are starting to pick up on this again. And you're right about intuition. That's a very important part. Hunches, what we call hunches, are things that are very part of human behavior and have been forever. And I think science needs to direct some attention on that aspect, because honestly, I think part of it may have some things we don't understand, but I think a lot of it can be explained in our ability to recount memories from our unconscious areas where, with us, with deep processing, we're able to take things way down deep and to take them and put things together, so to speak, where we can find new attachments or new connections with things that weren't there before. And that some people say, well, that's just intuition because it didn't follow with logic. Well, it did in a way, because you were able to deep dive enough with that particular thing and pull from memory things that you may have been considered disparate points on that data point, and now you're creating something brand new. And that's one of the things that highly sensitive people also bring to the table, is this great innate ability to create new things.
Yes.
Poets, artists, filmmakers. You can go down the list of things in the art community, and you're going to more than likely find a huge representation of highly sensitive people in that community, because creativity is a byproduct of our intuition and our deep processing.
Yes, exactly. Every highly sensitive person that I've ever met is creative in one way or another. And this creativity doesn't have to be the obvious one, like being able to draw or paint or create stuff. So
Exactly.
creativity also extends to being creative in finding solutions. So you
Absolutely.
see a problem and you can find creative ways of fixing it or coming up with creative ways of overcoming something. But it can also be creative in the sense of writing or
Yes.
expressing yourself in a different way. So it doesn't have to be the traditional thing that we think of when it comes creative. It just means that we have a different way of thinking and a different way sometimes of connecting the dots that can lead to things that are sometimes called out of the box
Right.
or abnormal or extraordinary even. And that is one of the natural gifts of being highly sensitive.
Absolutely. And I was just thinking about, of course, you and I both share backgrounds in IT. And one of the key things with IT is being able to problem solve. Whether you're a developer or whether you're a production support person, you have to be able to take some kind of approach in how you solve the problem of the moment. Now, I worked for a large American bank um, for most of my career, and did a lot more on the production support side. Um, and we would often find ourselves in bridge lines, conference calls, the middle of the night, trying to solve a problem in which, if we didn't solve it, the bank could potentially lose millions of dollars in interest or whatever, because something was not performing the way it was supposed to.
Yes.
In those kind of situations, what I have found, especially for me, I can't speak for every HSP, but when the gun is at your head and you've got to produce, it's much more difficult for us to do that than if we could be sort of set aside and allowed to troubleshoot the problem at the pace in which our brains tend to work. Now, it
Yes.
doesn't mean we can't do that, because I've done that myself, but I'm much more comfortable being able to say, let me noodle about this and fix it. Well,
Mhm.
if there's a big production problem going on, you need to fix it right then. So that creativity is maybe not always best suited for some kinds of problem solvings, but I agree with you. If you want a really deep answer to a problem, something that might even bring in out of the box information, creating brand new solutions, the people you want to go to are highly sensitive people, because
For sure.
they're the ones who are going to be able to say, I just got this idea, and if we do this and this, which nobody was thinking about, and you put these two things together, you come up with something completely brand new, and a
Yeah.
wonderful idea is born.
Exactly. We are masters at combining a variety of things into something new or jumping into a need that hasn't been fulfilled before. But it also extends to staying with the IT examples. We did Scrum in the morning, which means that
Right.
everybody was standing up and everybody was talking to each other about, well, not at the same time, one after another. This is what I'm working on. This is what I'm going to do today, and these are any problems that I'm having. So that's the basic stand up. And then someone would have a problem one day, and then the next day they would present the solution to the problem. And being highly sensitive, I could always very quickly see, oh, oh, that's not going to work.
Mhm.
But if we say that, then we are negative Nelly, or you're always such a downer Debbie, or you never have anything positive to say. Can you never support us? Could you please just shut up and not say anything anymore? Or a variety of those types of responses was what I usually got. And I thought, well, but wouldn't you want to know if it's not working? I
Right.
never understood it until I started learning more about the trade and understanding myself more. People don't have the same processing capabilities that we have. So once I learned that, and I learned that I sort of need to take them by the hand and dumb things down for
Yeah.
them to be able to understand, then it would be like, okay, so if we do this here, what will happen there? Well, that will happen. Exactly. And if that happens there, then what will happen here? Well, that will happen. Exactly. And if that happens here, what will then happen with the problem? Oh, it's not going to work.
Right.
Exactly. Oh, you're awesome. So it's the same thing, but presented in a different way, that allows you to go from zero to hero
Yeah,
in
exactly.
the way you explain it. And that is something that a lot of us struggle with because we don't think it is anything special. It is as normal as breathing to us. And we, or at least I, sort of unconsciously, I think, expected everybody's brain to work more or less like mine. So I never understood why they A couldn't see it and
Yeah.
B couldn't appreciate me pointing it out.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And just an interesting little aside here. When I was working at IT, we didn't, the area I worked in didn't use Agile very much. And so we didn't get the Scrum type and sprints and things like that. And I just recently learned about that. And I thought, you know what? And I'm going to bring this around back to our conversation here. That whole philosophy seems like it is so ideally suited for highly sensitive people. The way it's structured, the way it's done, it's not like traditional project management. It's not like traditional IT management. It's much more open and more interplay and the opportunity to do just what you're saying, which would, I think, be more conducive to a good environment for highly sensitive people. So all you IT people out there that are listening, if you are looking for a good environment to be in, I would suggest trying to find something with that. As what Barbara said, the Scrum environment is a great environment, I would think, for highly sensitive people. It sort of
Yes.
suits our temperament too. I mean, the way it works and so forth. But anyway, I thought I would throw that out there.
Yes, exactly. So it's really about getting to know yourself really well because what most of us um, suffer under is when everything's micromanaged. I
Yes.
think as a highly sensitive person, we work best when we are told, well, this is the end result that we're aiming for. It needs to be done in 3 weeks. Go for it, because
Exactly.
that taps into our creativity. That gives us the freedom to explore the problem, come up with the best possible solution, and then implement it in the best possible way. While most businesses micromanage things and say, we want this exact solution programmed or created in this exact manner with these specific specifications, and it needs to be done in 3 weeks. And if that is the thing that you were also going for, then we don't have a problem. But if we see a better solution
Right.
or a different type of solution that also fixes two other things that we knew the client was struggling with, then that would deprive us of using these qualities for the betterment of the project.
Absolutely, absolutely. And and again, I think that's exactly why it's really well suited for highly sensitive people. And it's funny, Barbara, I've used principles of that with my men's group,
Mhm.
where we initially started with a large group, which is a little uncomfortable too for some highly sensitive men. We've got 30 people on a kind of a checkerboard on a Zoom call. But we divided into smaller groups we call pods, which remind me of, a sprint team, right? They're self-contained, they're autonomous, they talk about what they want to do and so forth and so on. And it's worked out really well. People have really liked that. Having some control of what the conversation's about, being able to talk about the things they want to. And they're kind of centered around regional areas. So that makes it a little bit easier for people to get schedules straightened and work together. But I use that same kind of agile principle
Mhm.
as you're describing, to try to instigate that with the men's group. And it's actually kind of worked out well. I'm kind of putting my mouth money where my mouth is about how well Agile works with highly sensitive people. So
Yes, exactly. It's our brain just works different from most other people, and where other people might feel lost if they don't get specific directions, we in general thrive when we just can do our thing. Another thing, or another two things I actually noticed when I compared myself to my coworkers was if I picked up a task and we needed to fix a certain thing while I was going through what I needed to fix, I also spotted four other problems. While I was already there, I also fixed the four other problems and the one that was assigned to me. Most other people only do the one that was assigned to them. Even
right.
if they spot the other problems, then it's like, not my problem,
Yes.
not the one
Yeah.
I'm assigned to. And
Right.
so in general, we do more in the same amount of time than other people do. But I never realized this until I started seeing a discrepancy between the hours planned for something and the actual hours it took me to do it. And so
Right.
there was a task, for instance, and the team, so that was what you do in a planning session in Scrum, for those who do not know. You look at the tasks and you say, oh, that's going to take 4 hours, and that's going to take 6 hours, and that's going to take 8 hours, because then you know how many of these tasks you can fit in a 2 week sprint. So I took a task that was allotted 8 hours to do it. And half asleep, with two thumbs up my nose, I completed the thing in 2 hours. And the first time that happened, I thought, they must have misjudged it. So
Mhm.
being the scrum master, the one responsible for the correct planning of things and also the correct times allotted, next time I was more on top of it. And I said, are you absolutely sure that it's going to take these hours, and where are you basing it on? And then we had the setup again, and I picked up another task, an 8 hour task, and again I was done in 2 hours. But there was a similar task, and my coworkers really needed the 8 hours to do the task. And I didn't understand that again until I understood about high sensitivity. We have a high speed processing computer in our brain. So that allows us to very quickly see connections, and also very quickly problem solve, or see what needs to happen and come up with the best solution for it in the shortest amount of time. This
Right.
is our natural gift, our natural inclination, which makes us much faster in similar tasks than most other people would be.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah. So as we're talking, we're talking about all the positive aspects of being highly sensitive, and that's the part I think that needs to be delineated for, especially for people coming online, if you will. First time they know about high sensitivity, it makes all the sense in the world. All the things come together for them as far as, oh, that makes sense why I do this, and that makes sense why I react this way, and so forth. But then you have to take that knowledge that you've got and you've got to apply it to the real world. And having some additional knowledge about the giftedness of the trait, what it allows you to do, I think gives you the confidence to move forward with embracing the term sensitive, or embracing the trait as a whole. Whether you call it sensitive or high sensory intelligence, or you call it something else, is
Hmm.
up to you. But the idea is that you understand the fundamentals about the trait and
Yes.
understand the good parts about it. And I don't like to say there's bad parts. I like to say there's challenges, because in some ways it's just our not being educated about how to manage things like overwhelm, and not having a real good sense of emotional regulation and things like that. So these are all things we can learn, we can adapt to, and take those challenges into just things that we deal with and know how to deal with. And it makes it a less painful for us to say, okay, I'm sensitive.
Yes, exactly. Because it's always yin and yang, dark and light, sun and moon. There's always two sides to the same coin,
Absolutely.
and I think the childhood stories between highly sensitive men and highly sensitive women are not that much different. The commonalities are always that we feel very different from everybody else, that we feel misunderstood, that we also don't understand ourselves really well. We often get remarks like, "Oh, you're way too sensitive. Don't take everything so personal. Really grow a thicker skin," things like that. For a lot of us, this changes the way we behave because we want to fit in, we want to be loved, we want to be part of a group, we want to have friends, we want to have a good school experience. So a lot of us change who we are in order either to please or to fit in or to get something that we want. So this is a commonality that I see between both men and women, and those are the downsides of being highly sensitive. It's not taught in school. 4 out of 5 people are not like you. They don't think like you. They don't act like you. They don't have the same morals and values as you. And 4 out of 5 people mostly think about themselves. And this can cause loneliness and can isolate you and hinder you, and that can then lead to wrong job choices, attracting wrong partners, or ending up in a burnout if you're not careful. And so there are indeed challenges to the highly sensitive trait, which are mostly due to undereducation, to the fact that nobody really knows that it exists. I found out by accident when I was 32 because my boss told me, "Yeah, but you're exactly like my wife, and my wife is an HSP, so you need to be an HSP." I didn't even know what HSP stood for. I thought he
Right.
was calling me a name, and I was wondering, should I feel offended or something, you know? I didn't
Right.
know. And it wasn't until I started Googling it that I discovered it's highly sensitive person. And then I started learning more about the trait, and it felt like I came home to myself. Like, oh my God, I'm not weird, I'm not strange, I'm highly sensitive, and there are more people like me out there. And so that usually starts people off discovering it one way or another. And it's easier nowadays with podcasts like this and all the bloggings and the books and the whatevers that are there. So it becomes easier to discover this about yourself. But still, there are lots of misconceptions and lots of unknowingness. But when you then grow into your trait, you start discovering that it also has really beautiful sides, like the love for music and animals and nature, and being able to deeply experience things like that, which also elevates a love relationship if you're fortunate enough to meet the right person. And the creative problem solving that we already talked about, and there are many more. You can probably fill my list with many more things that are really positive. So I think our message here today is that if you are struggling with your sensitivity or with the word sensitive, then reach out and educate yourself more.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like I said, today, even the last 10 years, the amount of information about high sensitivity is going way up, and there's access to it online. It's easy to do. There's a lot of people have courses. I'm developing a course right now for highly sensitive men based on my second book. And uh, the idea is that what you have to realize, and so many of us feel this way, when, especially as we sort of step into this, is that we're not alone. And even though we're not the majority of the population, it's a sizable group nevertheless. We're talking billion, 2 billion people on the planet that have this trait. And so you're not alone. And there is a tribe for you. And one of the things that people will find is that when they start meeting highly sensitive people, if they go to things like these gatherings that a lot of, like Jacqueline Strickland has created, over the years,
Yeah.
and a few other people are doing as well, it doesn't take long to get connected with highly sensitive people. In fact, sometimes within 5 minutes, you've got a very strong bond with this person.
Yes.
It's all intuition. It's all just, you have so many commonalities that you don't even know about,
Hmm.
and it's so easy to connect with them. And then suddenly you don't feel like you're the Lone Ranger. You're not that 1 out of 5 people anymore. You're part of a group of people, that understands you and
Mhm.
relates to you.
Yes.
And that really, like you were saying a few minutes ago, that's one of the key things human beings do. They like to connect. They like to be part of a group. They like to feel part of something, maybe even bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
And getting out and doing that education part and going out and trying to connect with other HSPs is a
Mhm.
very big key to that.
Yes, for sure. I had a new male member in my community today, and he joined our group for the first time. And at the end, I asked him what was the best thing about today, about the community. And he said, well, normally I couldn't say it this way because people would look at me like I'm crazy. But I think I can tell it like this to you because I can express it in words. There are no words that describe how this feels, but it feels ooh and ah and oh and oh, and it's so wonderful. And I just, oh, it's so wonderful. And I cannot find other words for it, but I'm pretty sure that you understand. And I did, right? Because as highly sensitive people, we don't need a lot of words to describe what's going on. People can share their story or what they're going through with only a couple of words, and we know exactly the extent of the impact that it has had, and maybe the rest of the impact that's still coming in the future, and
Right.
exactly how you were feeling, what you were thinking, how you experienced it, what happened afterwards, right? Only from a couple of words. And that's the beauty of connecting with like-minded people that just really get it on
Yes.
a deep level where words are not necessary.
And I think that's one thing that we all want is to be understood. And um, finding a community of people that are like you, where you are almost immediately understood and you feel comfortable, that you feel like you can be who you are, your authentic self. Um, there's nothing like that. It's an amazing experience to
Mhm.
come from I don't know who the hell I am to finding out, oh, this is what I am, and then finally finding there are other people like me who get me, who understand me. That's such a beautiful thing.
Yes, exactly. I couldn't agree more. Oh, I've been really loving our talk today, William. When we are nearing the end of our time together, so I wanted to ask, what would you like to say to a highly sensitive man that's still in the struggling phase?
Well, it's like I'll go back and say, kind of repeat what I said before, because that's usually where I've got down to now is reach out and try to find other highly sensitive men. You can do that online. And if you want to start at my website, you can do that too. It's a good place because I do have a men's group, but there are other men's groups out there. And what I'd like to see is more men's groups at a local level where they're actually sitting together and face to face. The physical part of it, I think, is really important too. But I would say get more educated about it and understand that there's more and more research that's coming out about it. There's more and more things that you'll learn as you stick with it, but find a way to get connected to this community of people. That will help tremendously. Being able to talk to people. There's plenty of coaches out there, and now there's networks of therapists out there too that understand the trade if you need any kind of therapeutic work or whatever. But don't give up, whatever you do. There's a community of people out there that will support you and be with you emotionally as you kind of get to a point where you can embrace this. And it can be done. Believe it. If I could do it, anybody can.
I love it. I would only like to add to that, you are not weird. You are
That's true.
not strange. You are not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. I understand that there might be some things that are not really pleasant going on in your life right now. But like William also shared, those can change by educating yourself, by surrounding yourself with the right types of people, and by growing into your trade as a person. You can turn it around and come to a place where I see it as a beautiful gift that I would not want to be without. How's that for you, William?
Perfect. That's perfect addendum to what I had said. And it's exactly what right as well. I mean, there's nothing wrong with you. You got to get, and especially if you're a man, you think you're defective as a man, that's incorrect.
Not true. No.
I like to think of us as being specialized humans. We have a special gift and a special trait, and we need to learn how to use those traits. And it'll add to sort of fulfillment for you in your life.
Yes, for sure. Oh, I've been loving our talk. This is such a valuable thing because, like I said in the intro, when a woman breaks down at the job site and starts crying, it's sort of accepted. Usually they say, "Oh, it will probably be that time of the month."
Yeah.
Also, not great to hear as a woman, but it's sort of accepted. But when a man breaks down and starts crying on the work floor, it's like, "Oh my God, what is he doing?"
Yes, exactly. And
And
that's a shame.
yeah.
That's a shame because I always say emotion is a human characteristic. And I think all of us, male and female, we try to delineate things. And the human genome is so diverse that you can't
Mhm.
just say this bucket goes to the women, this goes to the men. So what I try to say is this: be a human being first. Being emotional is part of the repertoire of human behaviors. Be human first, and then if you want to identify as with a particular gender, that's fine. But that humanness is what we're all after anyway, and that human acceptance.
Yes.
So being emotional is part of that.
Exactly. And also realize that every highly sensitive person is also unique. I often have people that come to me saying, "I'm not sure if I'm highly sensitive because I don't have any issues with the brands in my neck of clothing, or I'm not sensitive to this or other things that are listed as traits for high sensitivity." So, what I say to them is, like everybody else, every highly sensitive person is also unique. And these are things that could happen when you're highly sensitive. It doesn't mean that you should have all of them or that all of them apply to you. In general, it's not a disease, it's not an illness, it's not an affliction. There's nothing wrong with you, you're not broken. So it also doesn't make any sense to medicate you or to put you in rigorous therapy. It
Mhm.
just needs that you need to learn more about the trade and what sets you apart from the other 80%, so that you can make small choices in your life which make life a lot more pleasurable to live and a lot less overwhelming and impactful for you as a human being, whether you're male or female in this case doesn't really matter. So yeah, I can imagine that the people that were listening today are blown, that their mind is blown. So I want to ask you, listener, viewer, one thing, and that thing is that if you thought our talk, our conversation was valuable today, to share your biggest insight or your number one takeaway in the comments below this video, that would mean the world to me. While you're at it, you might also want to subscribe to the channel if you're new here, and maybe ring the notification bell so you'll never miss another video again. But I can also imagine that you want to know, where can I find William? Because I long for a group of men to be able to share things with, because I love the women. I can share a lot, but sometimes, you just want to share a guy thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I hear that a lot from guys too. It's just, I just want to talk to men that are like me. So you can reach me. Best way to get me is through my website. It's called thesensitiveman.com. That's one word, thesensitiveman.com. It's got links to my newsletter. It's got links to the blog. It's got links to the men's group, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're interested in finding out more about high sensitivity in men, whether you're a man or a woman, go there.
I love it. If that went too fast, no worries. I will make sure that the link that William just mentioned is included in the show notes, probably below the video, but it could also be to the sides, depending on where you are catching this. And well, then there are only two things left to say. One is to wish all the viewers and listeners a really great day and thanking them for tuning in and always offering all of their support. And the other is thanking you, William, for being such a wonderful guest and being so open about your experiences and talking about, well, how normal it is to be a highly sensitive man and to embrace it with all that you're worth. I loved it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barbara. I appreciate being on. It was a real great honor to be here.
Likewise. So This is the wrap for today. I hope you enjoyed our talk. Again, leave your insights or your key takeaways in the comments. And I look forward to talking to you again next week with another wonderful guest. And for right now, I wish you an amazing rest of your day and see you again next week.